Alrighty, so Decision Day is pretty much in the books, and just like what I did in terms of the preview for Decision Day, I'm going to be splitting the review into two parts. And in part number one, I'll talk about the chaotic Eastern Conference game that happened on Decision Day, and with all the things that had to be decided in the Eastern Conference with the Supporter Shield, the home field advantage, and also the playing round situation, and most importantly, five team fighting for the last two spot in the Eastern Conference. I was expecting some of these Eastern Conference games to be a little bit tighter and kind of a low scoring affair. But instead, it was kind of the complete opposite, and that we definitely saw a lot more goals than I expected in terms of the Eastern Conference game on Decision Day. And there was also some game where there was no defense that was playing in the game. And one of those games is where we begin our review of the Eastern Conference game. That is Chicago versus NYCFC. And there is no doubt that not only this is the craziest game out of all these games that happen on Decision Day, but this might be one of the craziest game I've ever seen on any Decision Day that I've been part of, and probably one of the craziest first half I have ever seen in an MLS game. So the craziness all started in the 4th minute when Mihailovic's free kick was denied by Sean Johnson, before Frankowski looked like got the opening goal for the Chicago Fire in the 5th minute, but unfortunately it was disallowed for offside, and he wasn't actually in an offside position when he of course struck this one, but unfortunately when he struck this one and it actually took a deflection off of Mihailovic was in an offside position, and therefore that's why the goal of course was disallowed, before Castellanos on the other end struck the post in the 14th minute, and on the very next play, Callens is able to score on the corner from Maxi Morales to give NYCFC a 1-0 lead, before it will be 2-0 in favor of NYCFC as Mackay Stevens able to score from an empty net in a tight angle to make it 2-0 in favor of them. And little did we know that that was kicked off of what pretty much all hell broke loose at that point, and that there was just goals flying left and right and left and right, and it was just a roller coaster ride of what we're going to see in the last 14 minutes of the first half. Because just 1 minute later, Robert Beric is able to score from Mihailovic, and I thought this was a defensive lapse for NYCFC because Robert Beric was just completely left unmarked in the box, and the fact that he was left that wide open has to be some defensive mistake, and somebody forgot to mark him. But unsurprisingly, Beric was able to bury probably one of the easiest header he's able to score to give Chicago some hope heading into this game. And just as they thought that they got back into the game and there's some hope in this one, Medina would score for Morales and Park to restore NYCFC 2-goal lead, before Frankowski would once again give Chicago hope in the 41st minute to make it 3-2 up to that point. Then it was 3-3 in this game when Frankowski scores from Mihailovic just 2 minutes later, and at that point I just could not resist and put WTF is going on in this game, because I don't think I have ever seen a game where there was not only that many goals scored in the first half, but just so many attacking play that actually led to a goal, and that the defense, I don't know if both teams realize that this is a Decision Day game, and that one team realized that, yeah, this is a game where we have to win if we're going to potentially make the playoffs, and the other team probably think this game might be a game we need to win if we at least going to have one home game that is at Yankee Stadium. And to be fair, the man is almost intensified in the 45th minute when Johnson was able to deny Gaston Jimenez, and that would have been 4-3 up to that point in favor of the Chicago Fire. But as we head to halftime, where there was definitely a huge kind of sigh of relief, the fact that first half and how crazy that first half went. As we head to the second half, I thought maybe we're going to get once again more goals, and maybe things were kind of going to be a little bit tightened up, because there's no way in the world in the second half we're going to continue to see that free-flowing soccer as we saw in the first half. Well, in some way, things did kind of tighten up a little bit, but there was also still chances for both teams to score the next goal. First, Shuttleworth robbed Mackay Stevens in the 55th minute, before there was a shot for a handball that was ignored after it looked like Chanel handballed it in the box. And I think the reason why this is not a penalty and this is not a handball. It's kind of similar to what happened last week in that Orlando game and also in that Colorado game, of the fact that when you're a player, basically handle the ball, but that ball basically come off of your feet and then it basically bounce into your hand. There is a rule that says that of course is not given a handball and that it's not going to be a penalty. And it's good to see that at least the referee in this game recognized that rule, because I was thinking with how inconsistent refereeing decision and VAR has been in this league, they're probably going to call that a penalty. When in the midweek games we saw that happen twice in 2 of the games, and those were not called a penalty. But just 6 minutes later, Shuttleworth was able to once again rob Castellanos, and I thought there was definitely going to be a goal left in this game. I mean, as much as we kind of went through a bit of a spell where there was not going to be a goal in this one, with the way how even things have gone and how things were still kind of very open, it looked like somebody was going to get that crucial 4th goal. And in the end, it was NYCFC, the one that got that crucial 4th goal, as Castellanos would score in the 77th minute. But in many ways, this was an absolute gift from the Chicago Fire, was an absolute gift for NYCFC from the Chicago Fire, because this was an absolute terrible back pass from Navarro that basically sent Castellanos through on goal, and he easily basically slots it into the back of the net to give NYCFC a 4-3 lead before they had a chance to tie it up once again and make it 4-4 when Elliot Coulier should have scored, or a chance that he had from close range and basically had a chance to just tap it into the empty net, but he basically blasted that one high, and that missed opportunity pretty much sums up the Chicago Fire this season. I mean, there's just so many times we've seen that happen this season where they have big chances of scoring a goal and could really change how this game went. But instead, they would fall short in this game, and also would fall short in terms of making the playoffs, as this game, also with the Montreal resort and the Miami resort that I'll talk about a little bit later, was enough for them to be deemed to be eliminated from the playoffs and then finish just 1 spot below the red line. But the shots in this game, 20 shots compared to 19 that Chicago has, 10 shots on goal compared to 7 that Chicago has, 6 shots off target compared to 9 that Chicago has, 4 shots that was blocked compared to 3 that the Fire has, and possession-wise, 53% possession compared to 47% possession that this crazy madness game ends. But either way, what a slugfest this game was. And that if you're NYCFC, yes, you're going to be happy that you were able to get the 3 points, but I think there's got to be a little bit concerned for Ronnie Daly, a team that, this was definitely a very poor defensive performance from them, and that this is now 2 games in a row where they look a little bit lackluster on the defensive end. And heading into the playoffs, knowing the fact that how things are going to be tightened up a little bit, and that there's no way we're going to see something similar to this in the playoffs, that is something that Ronnie Daly has got to address with this team, because you cannot have such a bad defensive performance as we saw in this game from NYCFC and expect to still able to outscore the opponent at the end of the day. It just does not happen often when we get into the playoffs. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Columbus versus Atlanta. So Atlanta is another team that unfortunately got themselves eliminated in the playoffs, although it was pretty much a long shot in terms of them making the playoffs, considering when you look at the scenario of how not only they need to win on the road against Columbus, but also the fact that they need teams to kind of help them out to get themselves into the playoffs. It was always going to be tough for them to make it to the playoffs. And really, I think at the end of this game, you can definitely saw some frustration out of Atlanta, and that some of their players even kind of took it at the end of the game up to pretty much finish of what has been a really frustrating year for this team. But early on in the first half, at least for the first 15 minutes, there wasn't really a lot of chances from either of these teams, and that the real first chance came in the 18th minute when Marino had a shot from a tight angle that just went wide off the post. Then we had a controversial moment in the 26th minute as VAR actually overruled an Atlanta penalty. And originally, when I look at this penalty that Atlanta was given, I thought this was probably not going to be overturned because it looked like it was clear that Room pretty much brought down Gallagher in the box, and that therefore it has to be a penalty. But when I saw it a couple more times, it looked like it was Gallagher, the one that accidentally kind of slipped right into Room. And when that happens, usually the referee is going to give the benefit of the doubt to the goalkeeper, and unsurprisingly the referee decided that that is not a penalty, and they overruled Atlanta chance to get the opening goal from the spot. And I know there's a lot of Atlanta fans are going to be upset about that call, but at the end of the day, as I said, Gallagher, he looked like he kind of slipped right into the goalkeeper that was also coming off his line, and it's kind of unfortunate that he kind of did make some contact in terms of that, but it would have been really harsh for me to see that would be given a penalty against the Columbus Crew. And that would also be a changing moment too, because Atlanta, who looked like they had a chance to get the opening goal from the spot, quickly find themselves 1-0 down 2 minutes later when Zarian was able to score from Valenzuela to give Columbus a 1-0 lead before it should have been 2-0 in favor of Columbus as Santos actually went through on goal, but unfortunately he wasn't able to keep his composure and blaze that one high off the goal. Now in the second half, Guzan once again robbed Santos, but this time Santos actually hit it from long range, and Guzan was able to deny him before Zardes would make it 2-0 in favor of Columbus, and that Atlanta was definitely in deep trouble. But thankfully, they were able to get a goal back, and this time they actually had a penalty that was actually gone in favor of them, which Marcelino Moreno was able to take the penalty to still give hope for Atlanta to come back into this game, and also hope to rely on other team to get them into the playoffs. But as they were continuing to try to push for those 2 goals to pretty much win this one 3-2, it just didn't look like it was going to happen, and that they just didn't look very good at all in terms of the final third, and that Columbus did a relatively good job in terms of shutting down most of the Atlanta attack. And as the game also continued to wind down, you can clearly see there was frustration that was in the face of those Atlanta player. And Franco Escobar basically took that frustration toward the referee after he, of course, did a crunching challenge on Pedro Santos. Now, that, of course, wasn't the one that got him a second yellow card. And that later on, he actually also fouled Darlington Nagbe onto the ground, which I think that one probably wouldn't warrant a second yellow card too. But what did get him a second yellow card is that he confronted the referee. And when you're on a yellow card, and I know you're frustrated because of how this game has gone, and quite frankly, how this season has gone for Atlanta, but if you confront the ref and you kind of show that frustration, yeah, that is going to be a second yellow card and a sending off. And even after Escobar kind of sent off, he continued to kind of lost his cool and actually head toward the Columbus bench and kind of maybe headbutt one of the stretcher group from the Columbus Crew. And I have a feeling Escobar is going to not only suffer suspension in this game, but he's going to definitely get a pretty big fine because, I get it. You're frustrated. The fact that you got a second yellow and how this game actually end, but at the end of the day, taking out your frustration like that and just pretty much in front of the Columbus bench is just very unprofessional from him. And that it's in the end, it ends up with Columbus getting the 2-1 win, and that I understand Atlanta are very frustrated with how the season had ended, but the way that their season end, it has to kind of leave a sour taste out of your mouth, even if you're an Atlanta fan, with the way that how the season ended. Instead of them trying to maybe, they might come up short by trying to fight to get the equalizer or even get the win in this game, and the other resort doesn't go their way. They just end up look like a team that become kind of a sore loser and kind of just took on the frustration right at the end of the game. But either way, the shots in this game, 12 shots compared to 9 that Columbus had, 4 shots on goal compared to 3 that Atlanta has, 4 shots off target compared to 5 that Atlanta has, 1 shot that was blocked compared to 6 that Atlanta has, and possession-wise, 45% possession compared to 55% possession. And because Columbus was able to get this win, they retain their spot in terms of that 4th position and that last spot to at least host one home game in the playoffs, which that has to feel good, knowing the fact that how this team really struggle when they go on the road. And even though this is going to be a team that at least going to have a home game this season in the playoffs, you just want they need to get things going on the road, and that eventually when they do head to the playoffs, and if they are going to make a deep run, there's going to be some games where they have to go on the road and able to get a win if they are going to try to make a deep run and pretty much be an MLS Cup contender. But moving on into the last match on this board before I switch the boards is the other playoff decider match between DC versus Montreal. And the reason why I say this is kind of like a playoff decider is that I have a feeling whoever wins this game is going to make the playoffs. Well, in this case, it was Montreal that wins this game, but albeit just like the game between Chicago versus NYCFC, this was also a very open game, and that either of these teams could have got the victory if they are able to show a little bit more clinical finishing in this game. And in the end, it was Montreal, the one that just showed enough clinical finishing to have a come from behind victory in this one over DC. Now, in the 7th minute, Diop was able to deny Assad from close range before Donovan Pines was able to score from Julian Gresso. And I thought early on DC were definitely well on top, and they would definitely look like the team that are just trying to blow away Montreal and really want to get a win and hope that other result go their way so that they can, of course, make the playoffs. But instead of DC looked like they were going to try to run away with this game, Montreal quickly responds, and then they had a chance to respond instantly, but Hamid was able to rob Piet before Bojan actually scored in the 13th minute from Kyoto to give Montreal the equalizer. And then Hamid had to rob Kyoto from close range again, and that you can clearly see the momentum, which early on it was in DC favorite, quickly switch into Montreal favorite. Kyoto had another chance in the 31st minute, but unfortunately he missed wide from close range again before Ola Kamara scores from Edison Flores to give DC the lead back, and all of a sudden the momentum was switch right back to DC, and that DC also had a couple of chances to maybe make it 3-1 in this game and make this one a little bit out of reach early for the Montreal Impact, but instead, right on the stroke of halftime, it looked like Montreal was the one that potentially could tie the game up. Hamid once again was able to make a good save, this time robbing Jackson Hamel. And then there was definitely a big shout for a penalty after it looked like Jackson Hamel was brought down in the box by Julian Gresso, but nothing was given during that play. And then just 1 minute later, Kyoto basically hits the post in the 3rd minute of stoppage time before in the second half Kyoto would blaze from long range in the 51st minute. And if you're Ramel Kyoto, you got to be very frustrated with the way that, is this just one of those days where I am not going to put the ball into the back of net, and whatever I do in terms of trying to score is just not going to come down with. Well, the good news is, despite the fact that his finishing wasn't at his best, at least he could be on the assist chart, because in the 74th minute, that is exactly what happened, with Wayama able to score from Kyoto to tie the game up at 2 apiece. And with a couple of minutes left, and it looked like Montreal was pretty much on their way of making the playoffs because of what other resort actually gone in favor of them, Kyoto finally get his well-deserved goal from Mason Toy and Kizar to make it 3-2 in favor of Montreal. Now, one thing that I forgot to put here on the board is that late in the game, Piet actually got a sending off after he put a very crunching studs-up tackle on one of the DC player. I believe it was Paul Arriola, who, by the way, Arriola was actually back in this game, and I was kind of shocked the fact that Arriola was able to play in this game, because, when he suffered that ACL injury early this season, I thought he was done for the season. Like, I didn't think he had any chance of coming back into this DC side, but he did came back to this DC side, and he actually had one big chance right before the Kyoto goal to actually potentially give DC a 3-2 lead, but ultimately we found out just 3 minutes later it was Montreal, the one that got the 3-2 lead. And despite the fact that they had the red card late in this game, they were able to hold on to win 3-2 in this one. And the shots in this one, 20 shots compared to 18 that DC had, 6 shots on goal compared to 7 that DC had, 9 shots off target compared to 7 that DC had, 5 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that DC had. And possession-wise, 54% possession compared to 46% possession. And again, this game was very similar to this one where it was an absolute slugfest and that both teams had a bunch of opportunity. But in the end, it was Montreal, the one that is able to walk out with all 3 points and get themselves the 9th seed in the Eastern Conference, while DC, despite the fact that they had that late heroic playoff push for the last couple of weeks, it was all for naught. And now heading into this offseason, it's going to be a very big offseason for DC, knowing the fact that I think they're thinking about who exactly is going to take charge of this team, and that this is really a transitional period now for DC, knowing the fact that the Ben Olsen era is clearly over, and now this offseason they might make some decision in terms of who exactly is going to stay with this team and who exactly they think is just not going to be good enough to be playing for this DC United team. But that being said, I am now going to switch the board and look at the last 4 games that happened in the Eastern Conference game of Decision Day. But yeah, moving on in terms of the next match is none other than the monsoon game between Inter Miami versus FC Cincinnati. And the reason why I say this is the monsoon game, or I would also like to say this is the tropical storm game, because there was actually a tropical storm happening while this game was being played, was because it was pouring with rain throughout the entire part of this game, and it was also very windy throughout this one. And there's no doubt that the only reason why this game was actually being played and kicked off on time was because of Decision Day. Have this game not taking place on Decision Day or happening in any other day, there's no doubt that they are either have to delay this game or the fact that they're probably going to be postponed to the other day, because there was definitely some condition throughout this game where clearly I don't think MLS is even going to be thinking about playing in this condition, and that condition in this game was relatively poor to say the least. But in the end, despite the fact that both of these teams have to endure a tropical storm in this game, it was Miami, the one that came out alive in this game, and that they not only got a win in this one, but because of other results that went right for them, they become the last team to make it in the Eastern Conference, and they also make some history of not only becoming the the 7th expansion team to make it to the playoffs in their expansion year. But this might be the first time ever in MLS history where we actually had both expansion team make the playoffs in their first ever season. Now, in the first half, I thought Miami had some good chances, but there was no clear-cut chances for both of these teams, at least until the 19th minute when Mikey Ambrose scored an absolute golazo in this moment to give Miami a 1-0 lead, before LGP would score for the second week in a row, and for the second week in a row would score a header from Lewis Morgan. And somewhere in Atlanta, after seeing those 2 goals, they must be crying right now with the way that they let go of those 2 players, and that Miami fans after this game must be thanking Atlanta fans for letting two players that I wouldn't say they're considered reject for Atlanta, but those are also 2 guys that they basically let them go to Miami, and in the end that was pretty much the difference of why they were able to win this game and also make it to the playoffs. Now in the second half, you definitely saw that FC Cincinnati was getting back into this game, and that Miami, they felt like the 2-0 lead was enough for them to hang on and get the 3 points. Kovacic had a chance in the 46th minute, but his shot just went wide of the mark. And again, Miami looked like they was just holding on to that 2-goal lead. Well, that lead was reduced to 1 after the 66th minute because Joe Zhao would score his own goal also from Vasquez to make it 2-1 in this game. And definitely for the last 24 minutes of the game, if you're a Miami fan, you must be holding on to your breath, and also just kind of on the edge of your seat with the way how tight things have gone, and that there was a big chance for the equalizer for FC Cincinnati in the 86th minute when Hagelin header unfortunately was denied by by McCarthy. Before in the 88th minute, a sending off happened for Inter Miami as Reyes unfortunately got his second yellow card, and if the anxiety of them holding on to a 1-goal lead for the last couple of minutes wasn't high enough, this was probably on over the top. And that, at least the good news I will say for Miami fans, or at least try to kind of calm them down, is that this happened in the 88th minute, and that if this probably would have happened maybe in the 68th minute, yeah, they probably would be in trouble. And I guess the other reason why I will also kind of help them in terms of the anxiety of seeing their team holding on to a 1-goal lead is that they're playing FC Cincinnati, and this is a Cincinnati team that, even though they had a couple of chances late to maybe get the equalizer, I just didn't think that it was going to go their way with how the season has gone for them. And in the end, that of course was the case, as Miami was able to hold on to a 2-1 win. And the shots in this game, 13 shots compared to 12 that FC Cincinnati has, 5 shots on goal compared to 4 that FC Cincinnati has, 5 shots off target compared to 4 that FC Cincinnati has, 3 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that FC Cincinnati has, and possession-wise, 37% possession compared to 63% possession that FC Cincinnati has. And guess who Inter Miami is going to be playing in the playing round of the Eastern Conference? Yep, it's none other than Nashville SC, and that means that we probably will also have another historical moment in MLS where we could probably see only the third team to ever win a playoff game in their expansion year and in their first try in the playoffs in that game against Miami and Nashville. And I always say that that is probably a dream matchup that I have, with two expansion team going head to head in a play-in game in the playoffs. And I think coming into that game, if I want to say who is the early favorite, it has to be Nashville, with the way that I'll talk about later why exactly I think they are going to be the favorite in this Orlando versus Nashville game that I'll talk about last in this review. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is the Redbulls and TFC. So the Redbulls were able to spoil TFC in terms of Toronto's chances of winning the Supporters' Shield, although, to be fair, even if Toronto does win this game, because of what happened in the Philly resort, they wouldn't have won the Supporters' Shield either way, because Philly does have the tiebreaker over them in case if both of them are going to be deadlocked on points at the end of decision day. But early on in the first half, Akiona had the first real chance, but unfortunately just missed wide off net before Westberg was able to rob Tom Barlow from long range in the 22nd minute, as both teams were getting some decent chances of getting the opening goal. But it would be the Redbulls that gets the opening goal, and Barlow, who earlier was robbed by Westberg, wasn't going to be robbed this time in the 24th minute, as he was able to score to give the Redbulls a 1-0 lead, before Brian White would double that lead just 3 minutes later from Duncan and Davies. And just like that, the Redbulls were up 2-0, and it could have been 3-0 in the 38th minute when Barlow kind of had a little cross shot kind of combination that almost went in, but Westberg was able to palm that one away, and that the Redbulls were by far the better team heading into the halftime whistle. Now, in the second half, TFC realized that Philly was leading their game, and they probably realized, yeah, we better think about winning this game and hope that maybe Philly does slip in the second half if we want to try to get the Supporters' Shield. And they quickly come out the gate, scoring in the 52nd minute when Tsubasa Endo was able to score. Mara originally made a good save on Pozuelo, but unfortunately Endo was there to basically tap in the rebound to give TFC some hope in this game. And that after that goal, they definitely can put a lot of pressure on the Redbulls in terms of getting the equalizer. First, Mara did rob Bradley, who actually went through on goal in the box, before he would deny Pozuelo from 17 yards out. And you're just thinking that TFC was getting closer of getting the equalizer, or even trying to get 2 goals so that they can, of course, win this game. But thankfully, the pressure eventually kind of elapsed for TFC, and that the Redbulls did a much better job on the defensive end to not allow TFC a lot of chance late in this game. And in the end, the Redbulls hold on to win 2-1 in this one, as the shots in this game, 8 shots compared to 14 that TFC had, 6 shots on goal compared to 4 that TFC had, 1 shots off target per the 5 that TFC had, 1 shots that was blocked per the 5 that TFC had, and possession-wise, 36% possession compared to 64% possession that TFC had in this game. And I'm actually going to check to make sure that actually the Redbulls might have actually got into that 6th spot, because before I was doing this video, I actually forget to check the standings to see what is to see everything that is in place. And yes, indeed, the Redbulls with this win, they do get themselves in that 6th spot, and it's the reason why I want to mention why it's important that they got that 6th spot is because that's the last spot to avoid playing in the play-in round, and also because of New England losing, that's why they of course jumped themselves into the 6th position, and they don't have to worry about playing in a play-in round heading in a couple of days in terms of the playoffs. But moving on, in terms of the next match, is none other than the winner of the Supporters Shield this season, which goes to the Philadelphia Union, who of course take care of business and able to win 2-0 against New England. And you can see early on that they were definitely focused in terms of trying to win the Supporters Shield, because despite the fact that the game was kind of a little bit even and that New England kind of had some good early opportunity, for the rest of the game it looked like Philly was the one that potentially is going to try to get the opening goal and also trying to win this game. Now, I also thought the game kind of started to get a little bit physical as both teams kind of had some rough challenge against each other, and that there was even one instant that both of these teams kind of had a little bit of a scuffle right at the end of the first half. But right as we get into halftime, it looked like it was going to be 0-0. Sergio Santos scores in the 43rd minute to give the Union a 1-0 lead, before in the second half it could have been 2-0 if it wasn't for Turner making a good save to Rob Glesnes, who was completely unmarked in the box. But they did make it 2-0 in the 69th minute when Corey Burke is able to score from Martinez to give the Union a 2-0 lead. New England did try to get back into this game and maybe try to get one back into this to make it a little bit interesting. But either way, the Union did a great job in this game shutting down this New England attack. And then Shabilko almost put the icing on the cake in the 88th minute, but unfortunately he couldn't put his shot on goal, and it was actually blocked off of one of the New England defender. But either way, the Union, after 4 tries of trying to get a trophy, and after 3 times they failed to get a trophy at the final hurdle in the U.S. Open Cup, finally get their hands in terms of silverware by winning 2-0 in this one. 18 shots compared to 9 that New England has, 5 shots on goal compared to 1 that New England has, 5 shots off target compared to 4 that New England has, 7 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that New England has, and possession-wise, 43% possession compared to 57% possession that New England had in this game. And this has to feel so good for the Union of them finally able to get some silverware, and that just as we thought coming into this game of how much pressure that they had to deal with and how so demoralizing that they could potentially fail at the final hurdle again, they were making sure that it wasn't going to happen this time. And yeah, congratulations to the Philadelphia Union in terms of crowning as the Supporters Shield champ in 2020. But now they're going to have to focus heading into the playoffs. And unlike previous Supporters Shield winner, they don't get a bye heading in the playoffs. Well, they do get a bye in terms of avoiding in the play-in round, but I'm just going to pretend that's just kind of something that all those teams that actually finish below 6th position unfortunately have to deal with. But yeah, the Union is not going to get a bye, and that they're going to have to go straight into the first round and hope to trying to get wins and trying to maybe get themselves deep into the playoffs, because I can definitely see this team is definitely an MLS Cup contender team, and this is definitely a team that could definitely come out of the East and represent the Eastern Conference in MLS Cup later this year. But finally, moving on into the last game on this board, and probably the most meaningless game in the Eastern Conference, and even so, there was still something that was left to play in this one, with Nashville trying to hold on to their slim hope of trying to avoid play in the play-in round. And even though they did get a win in this game because of the fact that the Redbulls also got a win, they didn't get themselves into that 6th position and avoid playing in the play-in round. But however, I think even if they didn't avoid play in the play-in round, I do have some faith the fact that this team is going to do well, and that this is why I also said that, in that Miami game where I talked about how Nashville was definitely going to be favorites coming in to the play-in round, this is one of the reasons. I mean, I thought throughout this game, and especially in the last couple of minutes, I thought Nashville was probably dead and burying it. Looked like with the way that Orlando this season, at least for the most part, was able to hold on to leads, I didn't think Nashville was going to come back to it until one of their designated player, Hani Mukhtar, basically showed up in the 78th minute, and he completely changed this game for Nashville and complete a stunning comeback. Now, in the first half, Orlando actually got the opening goal just 4 minutes in when Daryl DK, who has just been red hot this season. Now, I'm actually surprised that DK didn't actually finish in the GOAT, at least near the top of the Golden Boot race, because it feels like he's been scoring a lot of goal this season. But he's able to score from Chris Mueller to give Orlando City a 1-0 lead, but Nashville would equalize just 16 minutes later when Lovett scored an absolute golazo that will be definitely nominated as the goal of the week to tie the game up at 1 apiece. DK had another chance to score in the 32nd minute, but this time Willis was able to rob him from the header as we head to halftime 1-1 and all to play for in the second half. Now in the second half, Nashville almost took the lead when Rowe was able to deny Jones from long range before Orlando would retake their lead in the 61st minute when Nani basically scored an FU to the 2-pro goal in that moment and scored an absolute wonderful free kick to give Orlando City a 2-1 lead. Could have been 3-1 in favor of Orlando in the 62nd minute with Mueller's strike that just went a little bit wide from short range. But instead, as we get in the latter part of the game with the way that Nashville was pushing to try to get the equalizer, in the 78th minute, as I mentioned, with Hani Mukhtar coming into this game, he absolutely changed the game and just made this Nashville attack that most part of the game was kind of stuttering. All of a sudden looked like a very, very good Nashville attack. Because in the 82nd minute, despite the fact that Rowe was able to deny Mukhtar in that instant, he wasn't going to be denied in the 87th minute as he scored from Mule and Romney to tie the game up at 2 apiece. And as we head deep into stoppage time, it looked like this is going to end up into a 2-2 draw. It would be their recent designated player that they just signed, Kadits, scoring the winner by none other than Hani Mukhtar, who basically was on the assist chart and eventually assisted the winning goal to Kadits, who of course make it 3-2 in favor of Nashville, and that would be the final score of this game. As the shots in this game, 13 shots compared to 11 that Nashville has, 4 shots on goal compared to 6 that Nashville has, 7 shots off target compared to 1 that Nashville has, 2 shots that was blocked compared to 4 that Nashville has, and possession-wise, 52% possession compared to 48% possession, and this is why I said about this Nashville team where, even though in this game they weren't at their best in terms of their defensive effort, if this is a Nashville team that can actually get things going on the attacking end, and especially how Hani Mukhtar can play like this when he of course is gonna be in the playoffs, this Nashville team is gonna be a very dangerous team, and this is definitely a team you do not want to play when you get into the playoffs. Whereas for Orlando City, as I said, they don't usually blow leads late in this season, but there are also some games where they of course blow late leads, and that this of course was one of those games, and that this kind of feels something very similar to what happened in previous year where Orlando just give up goals late, and that it just ends up to be very frustrating. But hopefully that won't be the case in this one, and that I guess this is maybe just a game where they felt like since there was really nothing left to play, the intensity level wasn't really at its best, and that I have no doubt that Oscar Pereira is going to get into his team, and he knows that he's going to tell his team that, yes, this might be just kind of feel like a friendly for them, and you didn't have the intensity level. you cannot do that again in the playoffs. Like, in the playoffs, you gotta, of course, bring your A game coming into that, and that there's no doubt that I think Orlando is going to be another team that is going to be a threat heading into the Eastern Conference, and a team that you do not want to face as we head into the Eastern Conference playoff despite this resort. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of the review for the Eastern Conference game. Like I said, hopefully later tonight I of course will do the recording for the Western Conference game, but I still kind of had to see some of the highlights of those games because, you know, I try my best in terms of watching all these decision day games, but some of them I wasn't able to catch because there's only as much as decision day game I can keep an eye on before I kind of start to not really pay too much attention into it and just kind of focus on the other game. But yeah, I'm going to continue to kind of watch some highlights after I finish, you know, recording this video and pretty much uploading it, and hopefully but then when I finish watching some of the highlights of those decision day game out of the Western Conference, that's when I, of course, is going to do the review. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.